Good afternoon all. I welcome all of you to this book discussion on behalf of the Modernity Studies Collective. To introduce myself, I am Satheese Chandra Bose. I am a member of this collective. It's my pleasure to be here today, 2 years after the publication of the Kerala Modernity book, of which the paperback edition will be out soon. In these last 2 years, apart from the edited volume, the members of the collective have produced a number of publications across disciplines. Among these, Vinod Kalidasan's article on the popular and tribal myths of Mahabali, Rachel Varughese article on Kochi Mercedes Binale, Anand's ethnographic work on the IVF clinics in Kerala, and Abhilash Malay's paper on the 18th century political economy of North Malabar, published last year, particularly endorse the methodology that the collective is trying to develop. Today, we will be discussing 2 books that are attempted to delve into 2 major strands of Kerala modernity, reason and pleasure. While they are definitely coming out from different disciplinary backgrounds, science studies and performance studies, these efforts are part of the academic project undertaken by the Kerala Modernity Studies Collective for the last 5 years. Through the first initiative of the collective, which culminated in the publication of an edited volume on Kerala Modernity in 2015, we have taken initiatives to re-examine the idea of the region with a view to understand its multiple space-times. Exploring the pathways of regional modernities, we try to open up an alternative counters of modernity other than the dominant paradigms of the national and the Malayali modernity. As a prelude to today's discussion, I will give a brief overview of these 2 books. Shiju Varughese book, Contested Knowledge, discusses the context of creation of a scientific public sphere in Kerala. This work focuses on the critical moment which emerged by the 1990s, when media had become the most prominent site of public engagement with science in Kerala. This phenomenon, he affirms, marks a commencement of a new form of public engagement with science, which radically differed from its earlier form in the 1970s and 1980s, nurtured by the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, a renowned people science movement in Kerala. Contested Knowledge discusses the social history of this particular shift and the resultant transformation in the characteristics of the scientific citizen public of Kerala. This book thereby highlights the role of the mass media and analyzes certain major controversies through which the scientific public sphere reached its maturation in the beginning years of the new millennium. The structural coupling of science with media and politics in contemporary liberal democracies has led to the emergence of the scientific public sphere as a deliberative space. This was an unprecedented phenomenon as it opened up a new space to negotiate modernization risk. The effect was such that it radically altered the characteristics of the scientific citizen public. The scientific public sphere gets activated when public controversies over science are staged by the mass media. The author focuses on the ideological shift that took place within the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad in the late 1970s. This shift, he argues, initiated a scientific citizen public that critically engaged with science from a Nehruvian journalist perspective of social relations of science. The scientific public sphere was largely impacted by a shift of the site of public engagement with science from the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad to the regional press in the 1990s. It happened when the newspapers started reporting the manifestation of risk in the everyday life of the citizens. Shiju argues that this has radically altered the way science was understood in the region, initiating risk controversies staged in the regional press. He deals with 3 major controversies which were instrumental in the creation of a modern scientific public sphere in Kerala. About the first controversy, Shiju discusses how an internal conflict between two groups of researchers within the regional cancer center at Thiruvananthapuram in the context of clinical trials triggered a public controversy on the regulation of drug research. He demonstrates how the trust in the scientific community was regained and the credibility of the institute was restored through a complex deliberative process where media institutions, scientists, health activists, government officials, and national regulatory bodies participated. The second controversy discussed is regarding a series of micro-earthquakes that struck Kerala. This even gave rise to a debate when various scientific institutions provided contradictory explanations regarding the epicenter and magnitude. When the phenomenon of Kaled rain struck Kerala in 2001, the ambivalence and controversies in the explanation provided by the researchers from the Center for Earth Science Studies raised public ire. The author argues that these public controversies demonstrate the formation of politico-epistemological alliances between different stockholders. And he also explains how scientists, journalists, editors, policymakers, government officials, and social activists encountered each other on the backstage to shape the deliberations on the front stage. A comparative analysis of the scientific controversies examined in this book is done to bring into focus some of the unique features of the mass-mediated public engagement with science in Kerala. Shiju suggests that the political imagination of modern democratization of science manifested through the scientific public sphere is structured through the risk perception of the scientific citizen public, and hence its construction eclipsed alternative modes of engagement with science based on radically different perceptions of risk. By offering a detailed discussion on multiple publics and their alternative modes of engagement in Kerala, he argues that alternative sites of engagement and multiple publics of science have the potential to offer new democratic imaginations beyond the scope of deliberative democracy. The book thus attempts to understand the complex engagement of science, media, and politics as an event of Kerala modernity. To come to the second book, Performance and the Political Power and Present Contemporary Kerala by Ameet, he takes performance as a critical site of inquiry to unravel the sensory and affective contours in the transformation of Kerala into a neoliberal regime. This work mainly explores the new identificatory structures of neoliberalism, linking it with an earlier absolutist movement in the Indian political history, namely the 2-year-long national internal emergency. This book tries to address certain questions. Firstly, how the lens of performance might offer a distinct entry point to think through the interlinked nature of political action, agency, and the domain of pleasure in neoliberalism. Second, the potentialities and fault planes might performance offer in thinking around the questions of collective and democracy and neoliberalism. Thirdly, how performance might offer alternative space-times and geographies to the homogeneous narratives around critical events such as emergency and liberalization. Influenced by contemporary theories of affect, Ameet highlights bodily sensory locations and actions and embodiment in general as important but neglected sites of enormous political significance. The chapters of the book are organized around 5 critical performance categories: vision, voice, gesture, mechanic body, and animality. In this book, Ameet tries to isolate each of these categories and highlights how each of these as lenses offers distinct way of sensory and affective articulation of the political. In the process, he analyzes diverse performance forms like theatre, cinema, katha prasangam, mimics ballet, and popular poetry recitals. Carrying forward the horizontal logic articulated in performance studies, He examines diverging performance practices and argues that performance, as a critical site of exploration, can be understood only by seeing the connections, cross-references, as well as the singular departures they make. In the first chapter, Ameet reads K.G. Shankarapilla's iconic poem Bengal and analyzes the play Chavarpada by Aziz. He looks at how performance was critical in this project for perceiving a new vision for the state, a state for which it was a world where terror was spreading. The second chapter looks at the immensely popular poetry recitals of the poet Kadamanita Ramakrishnan from the 1970s to the early 80s, and the widespread performance of K.J. Baby's play Nadugathika, performed in the early 1980s by the Vedi in the Adivasi hamlets of North Kerala. Through analyzing these two performances, he shows how, as differing instances of what he calls passionate voice, allows one to manifest and interrogate state of exception and offer a critical potentiality by playing with the affective realms such as pain, enthusiasm, bewilderment, laughter, and hope. In the next two chapters, he explains the relationship between authoritarianism and democracy, not in terms of clear oppositions, but as imbricated in each other in everyday life. The third chapter reads the film Ammayariyan, directed by John Abraham, and examines the history and practices of collective in Kerala. The second side he explores is the immensely popular Katha Prasangam adaptation of Bimal Mitra's novel by Sambashivan titled Iruvadam Nuttandu, that's 20th century. Here he examines whether one can actually see the theatricality of storytelling as a pure mediality which offers a possibility to engage with both violence and pressure in the everyday life under authoritarianism. Fourth chapter analyzes the performance form Mimics Parade that emerged in the 1980s in Kerala. Here Ameet focuses on an early performance in the early 1980s by one of the iconic groups, Kalabhavan, and attempts to link the form to early labor migration to the Persian Gulf. By doing this, he tries to understand how creating and performing the new region as an embodied archive for consumption can itself be democratic. In this chapter, he also analyzes the performance of Thiranjanapu, a solo performance by Elenikal Shashi, written by Jayaprakash Kulu, which uses the structure of mimics in a distinct manner. Here he also elucidates the possibility whether performance can be a parasite, consuming and evacuating the state from the inside. In the final chapter, Ameet revisits the problem of violence and state of exception. Ameet here analyzes Sakyendra Magan, the Elephant Project, a cross-cultural theatrical production in Malayalam and Japanese by the Kerala-based group Theatre Roots and Wings that presents the state of an elephant in the sphere of a Kerala temple festival ritual called Puram. He evokes a different perspective by using the figure of the animal and interrogates the question of human-animal relationality as critical in positing an alternative way of being worldly, where pressure and politics are not radically separated, and shows how the performance takes this scene of the capricent temple elephant moving into musk and trampling assembled people, a seemingly tragic but what is often seen as non-political as event as political. Through this diverse engagement in Kerala modernity, these books extend what the collective initiated through the edited volume, that is to explore the different strands of the region's modernity. I hope today's discussion on these books will help us to think further. Now let me welcome the first panel discussing Shiju's book, Contested Knowledge. Professor Dhruv Reina will be chairing the session, and the panelists are Mr. Sukumar Muralidharan and Mr. Karmal Christie. Dr. Shiju Varughese, the author of the book, will be responding to the panelists, followed by opening the floor for discussion. Thank you.